"Get your hands off the patient, or you're fired." The words cut through the ICU like a blade, sharp and public, meant to humiliate. Monitors stuttered, then steadied, their beeps suddenly too loud. Emily Carter didn't flinch. She stood between the bed and the security guards, her shoulders squared, a syringe of epinephrine steady in her hand as if it belonged there. On the bed lay a man who looked forgotten by the world, grey beard matted with rain, clothes soaked through, skin pale under harsh fluorescent light. A vagrant, they'd said. A waste of a room. The guards shifted their weight, eyes darting to the administrator's face, waiting for permission to move. Emily felt the room breathing. She heard it in the hiss of oxygen, the rubber soles squeaking on tile, the quiet panic behind clipped voices. She smelled bleach and cold coffee. She saw the man's chest rise unevenly. Too slow. Too wrong. "You're done here," the administrator snapped, lips tight, eyes hard. "Step away." Emily didn't look at her. She looked at the patient, at the tremor in his jaw, at the way his fingers curled, not weak, not confused. Trained. The kind of tension that never really leaves a body. One guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, please." Emily's voice came out calm, lower than the alarms. "Touch him," she said, "and you'll kill him." A beat. Then another. The room leaned in. Somewhere, a phone began to ring. Not the normal ring, something older, heavier. And for the first time, doubt flickered across faces that had already judged her. The administrator laughed, a short, brittle sound that didn't reach her eyes. "You're a nurse," she said, as if the word itself were a verdict. "You don't get to make calls like that." She nodded once, sharply. The guards moved. Boots scraped tile. Hands came up. The space around the bed collapsed. Emily felt the pressure shift. Years of night shifts and near misses had trained her to hear it. The moment when a room turns dangerous. She stepped closer to the bed instead of back. The man's eyelids fluttered. Blue, clear, suddenly alert. Not drunk. Not lost. His gaze locked onto hers with a focus that cut through the noise. "Don't," he rasped. The word barely made it past his lips, but his grip didn't match his voice. His hand closed around Emily's wrist, strong, deliberate. Not panic. Warning. The heart monitor dipped. 30. 29. The alarm screamed now, high and unforgiving. Emily didn't look away. She pressed the pacing pads harder, felt the jolt travel through his chest. The body jumped. The line steadied, thin but alive. "Jesus," one of the guards muttered, taking a step back. Dr. Nathan Brooks appeared at the doorway, coffee still in his hand, eyes flicking from the monitor to Emily. "What's going on?" he demanded, already annoyed. "We don't have time for this. Trauma's coming in from the highway." Emily finally turned. Her face was calm. Too calm. "He's in 3rd-degree heart block," she said. "Move him." "And he codes." Brooks scoffed, but his eyes betrayed him. He saw the rhythm. He saw the scar peeking from beneath the torn shirt. For half a second, The room hung in that silence where decisions become history. Then the phone rang again, louder. And this time, no one laughed. The phone's ring wasn't electronic. It was mechanical, deep, the kind of sound that belonged to another era. It cut through the ICU and froze everyone mid-motion. The administrator turned slowly, irritation giving way to something tighter. "Who's calling that line?" she snapped, already knowing the answer she didn't want. At the desk, a unit clerk stared at the receiver like it might bite her. Her hands shook as she lifted it. "St. Matthew's ICU," she said, voice thin. She listened, her face drained. "Yes, sir." A pause. "He's here." Another pause, longer. I'll put you through." The administrator snatched the phone. "This is Karen Whitmore," she said, posture straightening, tone rehearsed. The voice on the other end wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Whatever it said pulled the color from her cheeks, left her mouth slightly open, breath shallow. "I understand," she whispered. "Yes." Immediately. She lowered the receiver as if it weighed more than it should. The guards didn't wait for orders. They stepped back on their own. Dr. Brooks swallowed, suddenly aware of the coffee cooling in his hand, of how small the room felt. Karen looked at Emily. Really looked at her now. Not as staff, not as a problem. "Do not let that nurse leave the room," she said, voice unsteady. "Under any circumstances." Emily didn't react. She was watching the patient. The man's breathing evened out. His grip loosened. For a moment, his eyes opened again. Relief flickered there. Trust. Outside, rain hammered the windows. Somewhere, far above the hospital, rotors began to thump, slow at first, then closer. The sound rolled through the building like a promise, or a warning. Emily adjusted the pacing leads with practiced fingers, blocking out the growing noise beyond the glass. The rotors were unmistakable now, heavy, deliberate, not news helicopters, not medical transport. Military. She'd heard that sound once before, years ago, standing outside a base hospital, waiting for a brother who never came home the same. The memory tightened her chest, but her hands stayed steady. Dr. Brooks hovered near the doorway, no longer barking orders. His confidence had drained, replaced by calculation. He watched Emily the way men watch unexploded ordnance, unsure whether to approach or back away. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We need administration sign-off." Liability alone, Emily didn't answer. She checked the man's pupils. Reactive, focused, too focused for someone supposed to be unconscious. His chest bore the story now, fully exposed. The sternotomy scar ran straight and clean, surgical precision. The bullet scars were older, jagged, clustered where armor wouldn't quite cover. A life lived in margins, in shadows. A security guard leaned toward Karen Whitmore. "Ma'am, we have 3 aircraft requesting landing clearance." Karen nodded without looking away from Emily. "Clear the roof," she said, "and lock it down." The man on the bed exhaled slowly. His lips moved. Emily leaned in. "They'll come loud," he whispered, "and they won't ask." "I know," she said quietly. Outside, the building vibrated as the helicopters descended. Inside, the ICU felt suddenly very small, as if the walls themselves understood that whatever walked through the doors next would change everything. The first helicopter touched down hard enough to rattle the ceiling tiles. Dust shook loose. A low, concussive thump rolled through the ICU, felt more than heard. Emily didn't look up. She felt it in her bones. The patient did too. His jaw tightened. His pulse held. Footsteps followed. Not hurried. Measured. A cadence that belonged to men who never ran unless they chose to. The doors at the end of the corridor opened without ceremony. No shouting. No sirens. Just presence. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Karen Whitmore straightened, smoothing her jacket with a hand that trembled despite her effort. "This is a medical facility," she said, voice thin but trying. "You can't." A man stepped into view. Broad shoulders, rain-darkened gear, a face lined by weather and decisions. His eyes moved once around the room, cataloguing exits, threats, faces. They stopped on the bed, then on Emily. "Status," he said. "Third-degree block," Emily replied. "External pacing. He's fragile." The man nodded once, accepting it without question. "Good work." Dr. Brooks opened his mouth, closed it. He suddenly remembered every corner he'd cut, every patient he'd rushed. The room had chosen its authority, and it wasn't him. The patient's eyes opened again. He looked at the man in tactical gear and gave the smallest nod. Recognition. Confirmation. Outside, more boots hit the floor. Inside, Emily felt it settle, heavy and undeniable. This was no longer a hospital dispute. This was a recovery, and she was standing at the center of it. The alarms screamed again, sharper this time, tearing through the moment like glass. The rhythm on the monitor fractured, lines breaking into chaos. Ventricular fibrillation. The kind that doesn't wait for permission. Emily moved before anyone spoke, palms flat on the pads, voice cutting clean through the room. "Clear." The jolt snapped the man's body off the bed. The line stuttered, then fell flat. Dr. Brooks froze. His hands hovered uselessly, eyes wide, mind empty. I need cardiology," he stammered, already backing away. No one answered him. He was no longer part of the equation. "Again," Emily said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It carried the weight of command without asking for it. Another shock. The smell of ozone bit the air. Sweat ran down her spine beneath the scrubs. The man gasped. A raw sound pulled from somewhere deep. The monitor crawled back into rhythm, thin but stubborn. "Airway," Emily said. The man in tactical gear turned. "Medic." A soldier stepped forward, fast and precise, already opening a kit. No wasted movement, no questions. The tube went in clean. Breath sounds confirmed. The room exhaled as one. Emily leaned in close to the patient. "Stay with me," she said, not as comfort, but as instruction. His eyes fluttered. He nodded once, barely. Karen Whitmore watched from the corner, face pale, her world shrinking to the edges of the room. She understood now. This nurse she'd tried to fire had just overridden a doctor, redirected armed men, and kept a dying man alive through sheer force of will. And whatever came next, Emily Carter was no longer someone you removed. She was someone you answered to. The lights flickered once, twice. Then the ICU dropped into a dim red glow as emergency power kicked in. The monitors lagged, then returned, their beeps slower, heavier, like a heartbeat pushing through mud. Emily checked the battery on the pacer, jaw tight. Still running. Barely. The man in tactical gear pressed a finger to his earpiece, listening, eyes narrowing. "We've got signal interference," he said. Power disruption wasn't accidental. His gaze slid to the doors, then to the ceiling. They know he's here. Karen Whitmore opened her mouth, words forming out of habit. Liability, police, protocol. None of them came out. The room had shifted again, and she could feel herself on the wrong side of it. Emily didn't look up. She was tracing the patient's sternum with her eyes, counting breaths, counting seconds. "External pacing won't hold," she said. "The leads are burning him. We need a temporary transvenous wire, now." Dr. Brooks shook his head, panic finally cracking his voice. "I can't. I don't do that. We need a cardiologist." "You don't have 40 minutes, Emily replied. She pulled on sterile gloves, movement slow, deliberate. The weight of the choice settled in her shoulders. She knew the rule. Nurses don't cut. Nurses don't insert wires into hearts. The tactical leader watched her, reading the moment. "If you do this," he said quietly, "there's no walking it back." Emily met his eyes for the first time. There was no fear there, only resolve. "Then don't blink," she said, reaching for the tray. The scalpel felt heavier than it should have, cold through the glove. Real in a way paperwork never is. Emily marked the site with her thumb, just above the clavicle. Counting anatomy she'd memorized years ago, and never thought she'd need like this. The room had gone quiet. Even the soldiers stopped moving. Somewhere beyond the walls, boots ran, radios crackled. But here, time narrowed to skin and breath. Karen Whitmore found her voice at last. "You cannot do this," she said, sharp with fear. "You are not authorized. I will have your license." "I will have—" "Stop," the tactical leader said without raising his voice. His hand rested near his weapon, not threatening, just final. Karen closed her mouth. Emily made the incision. Clean. Precise. Blood welled, dark and controlled. She didn't rush. She felt for the vein by touch, not sight, guiding the wire the way she had seen 100 times from the side of the bed. Advance. Pause. Advance. The monitor wavered, then steadied. Still nothing. 1 more centimeter. The line jumped. Strong. Regular. Capture. Emily exhaled for the first time in minutes. She secured the wire, hands steady, even as her pulse hammered. The patient's color improved, grey giving way to something human, alive. Dr. Brooks slid down the wall, pale, defeated. He stared at the floor, at the truth settling around him. Emily stripped off her gloves, hands finally shaking now that it was done. She looked at the man she'd saved. He met her gaze and gave the smallest smile. Outside, gunfire echoed faintly through the building. The leader leaned in. "That bought us time," he said. "But not much." Emily nodded. "Then we move," she said, already thinking 3 steps ahead. The first shot echoed somewhere deep in the building, not loud, not wild, just sharp and deliberate. It wasn't meant to scare. It was meant to announce arrival. The tactical leader reacted instantly, hand snapping up, fingers signaling without words. 2 soldiers flowed to the door, weapons low, bodies angled. Professionals, the kind who expect resistance. Emily felt the sound in her chest. She checked the portable monitor as the bed was unlocked. Stable. For now. "If they cut power again, the pacer battery gives us minutes," she said. "Not more." "We won't give them minutes," the leader replied. "We'll give them confusion." The hallway outside the ICU was darker than before, emergency lights painting everything in bruised red. Smoke drifted faintly, electrical and sharp. Someone had breached a service entrance. Someone knew the floor plan. Emily's jaw tightened. This wasn't random violence. This was a retrieval gone wrong. They moved fast. The bed rolled, wheels whispering over tile. Soldiers formed a moving wall, bodies between Emily and every shadow. A shape lunged at the far end of the corridor. A suppressed pop. The shape fell. No screams, just the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. As they turned the corner, Emily caught sight of a figure slumped against the wall. Dr. Brooks. Bleeding. Alive. His eyes met hers, wide and pleading. She hesitated half a second, then kept moving. The choice burned, but the patient came first. Always. Ahead, the leader glanced back. "Roof or interior?" he asked. Emily answered without slowing. "Interior first," she said. "MRI suite. Thick walls. 1 door." The leader nodded. "Then that's where we make our stand." The MRI suite swallowed them whole, a cavern of shadow and cold air, humming with restrained power. The massive machine loomed at the center like a silent god, its bore dark, its presence oppressive. Emily felt it immediately, the pull in her chest, the subtle vibration through the soles of her shoes, always on, even in blackout. She looked at the rifles, the sidearms, the metal everywhere. "No guns," she said, "not in here." The leader froze, understanding snapping into place. "Knives," he ordered. Steel disappeared, replaced by matte blades that caught almost no light. The bed was rolled hard against the wall, the door barricaded with a supply cart that screeched in protest. Outside, footsteps approached. Calm, unhurried. The sound of men who knew they had time. The door burst inward. One of them stepped through carrying a compact weapon. The magnet answered instantly. The gun tore itself free, flying from his hands like it had been summoned, slamming into the bore with a deafening clang. The man stared, stunned, a heartbeat too late. The leader moved, fast and brutal. The attacker dropped without a sound. More followed. Knives flashed. Bodies collided. The fight became intimate. Breath, grunts, the dull thud of flesh against plastic casing. One slipped past, lunging for the bed. Emily didn't think. She grabbed a non-magnetic IV pole and swung, feeling the shock travel up her arms as it connected. The man fell hard, air gone. The patient groaned. The monitor spiked. Emily was back at his side instantly, hands firm. "Stay with me," she said again, voice steady as chaos closed in around them. The smell of smoke crept under the door, thin at first, then sharper, burning plastic and chemicals. Someone was lighting the hallway. Emily felt the heat rising before she saw it, the way a room changes when oxygen starts to disappear. The leader cursed under his breath, eyes on the barricade as it shuddered from another impact. "They're not breaching," he said. "They're cooking us." The patient stirred, fingers twitching at the blanket. Emily leaned close. "Listen to me," she said, low and firm. "You need to stay still." His eyes opened, glassy, but aware. He nodded, then reached weakly toward his boot. "There," he whispered. "Inside." Emily followed his gaze, unlaced the mud-caked leather, and found it taped beneath the tongue. A tiny card. Light as nothing, heavy with meaning. "What is it?" the leader asked, already knowing. "A list," the man breathed. "Names. Traitors." His chest hitched. "They'll burn the whole place to get it." Another crash. The cart slid inches. Smoke thickened. The leader scanned the room, then the reinforced window into the control booth. "That glass," he said. "Not bulletproof," Emily replied, already lifting an oxygen tank. "But it breaks." She swung. Once. Twice the glass exploded outward. Fresh air rushed in like mercy. They moved together, lifting the bed through the opening as flames licked the doorway behind them. The MRI suite roared, angry and abandoned, as they disappeared into the dark. The service corridor was colder, narrower, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. Their shadows stretched and broke as they moved, the bed rattling softly between them. Somewhere above, alarms wailed and then died. The building was bleeding systems, one by one. Emily kept her hand on the monitor, counting beats, feeling the borrowed time tick away with every step. They almost ran into Dr. Brooks near the lockers. He was slumped against the wall, arm bleeding through his sleeve, eyes wild. "Don't shoot," he blurted, shrinking back at the sight of the soldiers. Emily stopped despite herself, knelt, assessed the wound in seconds. Superficial. He'd live. "Come with us," she said. "If you stay, you die." Brooks nodded too fast, scrambling up, shame and fear clinging to him like sweat. The leader watched him as they moved again, silent, measuring. As the elevator doors came into view, Emily noticed something else. A faint glow through Brooks' pocket. Rhythmic, Wrong. She slowed. "Why is your phone on?" she asked quietly. Jammers killed everything. Brooks froze. The leader's rifle came up. "Hands," he said. The phone slid out. A burner, a fresh message on the screen. "Target moving to elevators. Cut them off." Emily stared at Brooks, something in her breaking cleanly. "You sold us," she said. Tears spilled as fast as the truth. "I didn't think they'd come here," he sobbed. "I just flagged admissions. I needed the money." The leader didn't shout. He didn't have to. "Type," he said. "Misdirect them." Brooks obeyed, shaking. The message sent. The phone crushed under a boot. "You're done," the leader said. "Hide. If you live, prison's waiting." The elevator doors slid shut, carrying Emily and the patient upward into the storm. The doors opened onto wind and rain so hard it felt solid, sheets of water slamming sideways across the roof. The helicopter hovered low, rotors screaming, lights cutting white scars through the dark. For half a second, it looked like salvation. Then 4 figures stepped out from behind the ventilation stacks, calm silhouettes against the storm, rifles already rising. "Contact!" the leader shouted, and the roof erupted. Suppressed shots cracked, sharp and fast. Concrete sparked. Emily dropped her weight into the bed and pushed, muscles burning, shoes skidding on wet metal. The patient groaned as the gurney jolted, the monitor chirping in protest but holding. Bullets chewed the air where she'd been a moment earlier. She didn't look back. She locked onto the open helicopter door, the crew chief waving her in, mouth moving, but words lost to the wind. A gunman broke from cover, angling toward her, weapon tracking low. The leader saw it too late to line up a clean shot. He moved anyway. He stepped into the path and took the hit, the round slamming into his armor and driving him back a step. He stayed up, fired. The attacker fell. "Go," he roared, blood streaking his teeth. Hands grabbed the bed, hauling the patient aboard. Emily climbed after, fingers numb, lungs on fire. The leader and his team piled in as the door gun opened up, thunder rolling across the roof. The helicopter lurched, lifted, tore free of the hospital as the city fell away beneath them, still burning, still alive. The helicopter banked hard into the storm, rain hammering the fuselage like thrown gravel. Emily braced herself against the floor, one hand gripping the stretcher rail, the other steady on the monitor. The patient was awake now, eyes clear despite the pain, tracking every sound. The leader slumped against the bulkhead, chest rising fast, blood seeping through his vest. He waved it off when the medic moved toward him. "Later," he said. "Fly." A shrill tone cut through the cabin. The pilot's voice tightened. "We're painted. Missile lock." The warning light pulsed red, unforgiving. The helicopter shuddered as flares blasted free, streaking white through the black sky. Emily felt weightless for a heartbeat, stomach dropping as the aircraft dipped, then fought its way back up. The patient reached weakly into his pocket and pulled out the tiny card. He held it out to the leader. "If we don't make it," he said, voice rough but steady, "you swallow this." The leader shook his head once. "We're making it." The radio crackled, static. Then a calm voice cut through like a blade. "Dust off! This is Viper lead. Look up!" 2 jets screamed overhead, tearing the clouds apart. A flash lit the sky as something exploded far above them. The warning tone died mid-scream. Silence followed, broken only by the engine's roar. The pilot exhaled. "Threat neutralized. We're clear." Emily sagged back against the wall, tears mixing with rain on her face. She looked at the patient. Alive. Still here. And for the first time since the night began, the world seemed to loosen its grip. The rotors slowed as the helicopter settled onto the pad, rain washing the city clean beneath them. Doors opened, and men in uniform moved with quiet urgency, hands steady, voices low. The patient was transferred without ceremony, treated not as a mystery anymore, but as what he had always been, an asset, a survivor. Emily stepped back, soaked, exhausted, watching as the stretcher disappeared into the light. The leader caught her eye before they wheeled away and gave a single nod, the kind that carried more weight than medals. By morning, the hospital would issue statements, committees would meet, names would fall from doors and letterheads. Dr. Brooks would be gone. Karen Whitmore would be escorted out with a box, and a silence that followed her down the hall. The MRI suite would be sealed. Reports would be written carefully, leaving out the parts that couldn't be measured. Emily returned to her locker at sunrise, hands still trembling as she peeled off blood-stained scrubs. No one stopped her. No one told her she was fired. A nurse from day shift met her gaze and said nothing, just reached out and squeezed her arm. Respect passed quietly, the way it always does among people who understand what it costs. She walked out into the grey morning without applause, without headlines, carrying only the knowledge that she had held her ground when it mattered. If stories like this move you, show your support with a like, subscribe for more, and comment, stand your ground.